Welcome to Wellsprings Community Church.
So we've begun this Advent series, thinking about the story behind the songs. It's always fun when you come to those sort of regular times of year, Advent and Lent and Easter and Christmas, trying to find ways of representing some of the things that probably everyone's looked at lots and lots of times before. And so for this year, for Advent, this is the way that we've decided to come up with things. We're thinking about the story behind the songs. We've chosen a variety of different carols or Advent songs to help us to think about that first Christmas and that first story and that story that's behind each of these songs. And today, we've got as far as number 2 when we're thinking about that song, O come, Emmanuel. And we'll think about what that might say to us in our lives today and what it might reveal of God and his love and his will for us today. I just wanted to tell you a story that you may have heard me tell before. It's unlikely that you haven't heard me tell it, I'm sure. A few years ago, I was living in Bristol, 1992. I can tell you the exact year that it was. In 1992, I'd been home to visit my family up in Leeds, and this particular Sunday, I think it was, I was then travelling from Leeds to Bristol, which is quite a long journey. I couldn't drive at that point, and so I would get the National Express coach, which would take all day, especially on a Sunday, going through all the little villages everywhere and to get all the way from Leeds to Bristol. The problem that I had that particular day was that it was towards the end of the football season. And that day, Leeds were playing against Sheffield United. And if Leeds won their match against Sheffield United, I know it might come as a shock to some of you. There's not too many younger people here, so that's okay. If Leeds beat Sheffield United that afternoon, they would win what was the old First Division. They would win the title. They'd be the best team in the country. Leeds, we're talking about. And so I had to work out, what do I do on that day? Because I've got to travel and get back from Leeds all the way to Bristol, and I'm going to be on the coach. And I worked out what I needed to do was to take a little radio with me, plug my headphones in, and listen to the match as I travelled down. Because I knew Leeds were going to win. You know that sort of knowing something where you don't actually, you're hoping, you're desperately wanting it to happen, and so I was hoping, but yeah, Leeds are going to win. And so we set off on this journey, and partway through the match started, and so I'm listening on my headphones, and Leeds took an early lead. And I got excited. And I noticed there was someone about 4 or 5 seats ahead of me on this coach who also had headphones on, who at the same time as I heard that Leeds had scored and he listened to the commentary and started to get excited, I could see this sort of reaction in him. And I thought, oh, he's listening as well. Obviously Sheffield United equalised and then scored again to take the lead. And you could see the shoulders of this man further forward sort of slump at that point. But we still had this hope that we could do it. And then Leeds equalised. And then with just a minute or two of the match left, if you remember the match, it's this weirdest goal you've ever seen. The Sheffield United player kicked it up in the air, but they scored an own goal. And Leeds were ahead 3-2 with just a minute or two to go. And I went, yeah! And the man further forward sort of jumped and looked round and saw me, and we did a nod and then a thumbs up. And Leeds won. Thank you. And we got to Bristol, and this man got off the bus at the same time as me, and we both sort of, because you don't talk to me, we nodded at each other. And then I got a bus to take me to the house that I was staying in. There was a family very kindly looking after me. And I got to the door of the house, and the husband of the house opened the door and came rushing out. And he said, I know you've been travelling down on the coach all the way from Leeds to Bristol this afternoon, and so you won't have seen or heard anything about the match. And so I've avoided watching it or anything, and I've recorded it so we can sit down together and watch it. Which was incredibly kind and incredibly thoughtful. And I didn't have the heart to say, I've listened on the radio, I know. And so I sat with him watching. But I knew the result. I didn't have to hope beyond hope and have that, that feeling inside where you're hoping for something, but you know it's not going to happen because it never happens and it doesn't. I could watch it, even when Leeds went 2-1 down, knowing that the end result was going to be Leeds winning. But I didn't want to let on, so when the goal went in, I did a sort of, oh dear, oh. Because I couldn't disappoint this man. But I think sometimes when it comes to things with God, and things with the Christmas story, and things with our reading the Bible and praying and all kinds of different things like that, when we're in the middle of things, we know the answer. We know what's going to happen at Christmas. We know what's going to happen at Easter. We know all the stories. We know all the stuff. But still, somewhere inside, when things are happening around us or things are happening to us, we're more like I was on the coach than sitting watching the recorded match. We still have those things inside that say, this can't be true. This can't be real. This surely isn't going to happen. Look at the situation. Look at what's going on around me. Look at how I'm feeling. When we're in the middle of things, we know we should still feel joy, like Phil was talking about last week. But when we're in the middle of things, actually it's a different kind of feeling. We can hope for that future. We can hope for what's ahead. We can hope for an answer to the situation we're in or the problems that we've got. But when we're there, it's still so difficult to know that. Back in the first century when Jesus was around, the Jewish people were waiting for the Messiah to come. They were desperate for the Messiah to come because they were under the control of the Romans. They couldn't be who they were meant to be. They couldn't do what they were meant to do because the Romans had them captive, had control of them, even though they were there in their own land. But they had this desire, this hope, that probably for lots of them deep down they didn't really think would happen. When we come to this song today, O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here. We'll think about some of those words in a minute. The first word I want us to think about though is that word Emmanuel. It comes from several places in the Old Testament, but one of the most famous ones is from Isaiah chapter 7. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son. Sound familiar? And will call him Emmanuel. When Matthew quotes that in his gospel, he then adds a little bit just to make sure we've understood. And he says, and we'll call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. That's what the Hebrew word means, God with us. God himself was going to come. Well, yeah, but surely it's not going to be quite... And is it really going to happen? Oh, I hope it does. I hope God's going to come and be amongst us and he's going to come and make a difference. But they had this, oh, come. Please come, Emmanuel. And they understood all this stuff about ransom, about being bought back from slavery. That's what that word means. They'd been slaves in Egypt, and God had ransomed them. They'd been taken away into captivity in the exile in Babylon, And God had ransomed them. And now here they were with the Romans. They're back in their own land, but they're still captive. They're still prisoners. They still can't do what they want to do. Oh come, Emmanuel, like you've promised, God. Come amongst us and ransom captive Israel. Pay for us to be bought back from that slavery that we're in, from that exile that we're still in. It had happened in the past for them, and they were hoping desperately it would happen in the future for them. But here they were sat in the middle saying, is it really going to happen? Yes, we've had these experiences as a people before, and we're hoping beyond hope it will happen. But they were living right in the middle of it. People talk sometimes about the now and the not yet. Now the kingdom of God has come, but we don't see it fully yet. That's the kind of position they were in. They knew God had come and had intervened in the past, and they knew he could come and be with them, but they hadn't yet seen the full fulfillment of that. And then we go into verse 2 of the song. O come, thou rod of Jesse. What? Rod of Jesse. It's all Isaiah's fault again. Isaiah chapter 11, he says, a shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. From his roots a branch will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him. The Spirit of wisdom and of understanding. The Spirit of counsel and of might. The Spirit of the knowledge and fear of the Lord. A shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. If you've got a stump, it means it's been cut down. It's been killed. The hope of what would come has ended. The descendants of Jesse, of King David, they had gone. They were no longer the kings. What were they going to do? But from that stump of Jesse, from that place of death and of ending and of defeat and of loss, a branch would come that would bear fruit. A dead stump would become new growth and new life. And it's talking now not just about a national thing, not just about Israel as a nation, but it's talking about a personal thing too. It's not just talking about a physical outer change, it's talking about a spiritual inner change as well. It talks in that verse, if I go the right way, no, where's it gone? There, oh, sorry. O come thou rod of Jesse, free thine own from Satan's tyranny. From the depths of hell thy people save, and give them victory over the grave. The devil and hell and death and sin being defeated. How does that happen? By new life coming from a place of death. Through Jesus' death and resurrection, overcoming everything that holds us captive, that holds us trapped, that separates us from God and from being who we're meant to be. Whether that's the devil, sin, death, hell, whether it's things we've done, whether it's things that have been done by others to us, whatever it is that stands in that way, Jesus is able to overcome. But we live now in the middle of that. Jesus has done it through his death and resurrection, but he hasn't yet returned to bring it to its complete fulfillment. And so we live in that time where we say, is it really true? Could it really happen? I think I believe it, I think I know it, but maybe not. on the bus listening to the radio. And then we get verse 3. O come, thou dayspring from on high. I found out the Bible reference that comes from. I looked it up, and it didn't say that. Dayspring is an old-fashioned word. In the King James Version, it says dayspring, but not in any of our modern versions. Anyone know what dayspring means? It means a new dawn. It's the day springing forth after night. It means the sunrise. It means the morning. Oh, come thou dayspring, that sunrise, that new life and new light from on high, and cheer us by thy drawing nigh. Disperse the gloomy clouds of night, because you're the sun who's rising in the morning, and death's dark shadows put to flight. He's the light of the world who overcomes the darkness. All these things that have happened and are still yet to fully happen. And we sit in the middle with that hope, with that desire that it's true. But often we sit with that hope in the way that I sat on the coach listening to the football on the radio, rather than the way that I watched it in the recording on the TV. There have been things this week that I've had to deal with, people that I've had to speak to, situations that I really wouldn't want to be in, but I've had to be. Some of you may have known a friend of mine called Kev. When lockdown started, I didn't really know Kev that much at that point. I'd seen him around, I'd chatted to him a couple of times. He came to me and said, I've heard that you're going to be going and doing deliveries and prescriptions and all that sort of stuff during lockdown. I'd really like to help with that. And I said, yeah, that would be great. And then every single morning at 7 o'clock, I'd get a text from him to say, what jobs are there to do today? And he was the person who did probably the most out of everything. A couple of weeks ago, I saw an ambulance pull up outside our next door but one's house. And you know, like you do, you look through the window and see what's happening. And then I saw Kevin being brought out on a trolley from that house because it was a friend of his who lived there. And then I got a call later that evening to say that Kevin had died. Nothing to do with COVID, he had a heart attack and it runs in his family and stuff like that. So many people whose lives he touched even in these last couple of years, all saying, why? And I can talk about what Jesus has done, and I can talk about what will happen, but right now we're sat in the middle with the reality of some of this going on around us. I can't say too much about this. You know, recently there were some deaths in Norton. I've been involved a little bit with speaking to people connected to that. What do you say? Let me tell you about what Jesus did and about what's going to happen, but right now we're living in that middle bit. And there are times even when I'm talking to people, I think, oh, that hope that I have, that certainty that I have. Oh, I'm on the bus listening to the radio. You with me? But actually each time I have known, at some point in those conversations that I've had, that sense of the certainty of the hope that I have. And I've been able to share some of that with them. I've been able to listen and to respond to what people are saying. I've been able to, I hope, bring some kind of hope to those people involved. And I think it's great that we can sing songs, we can sing carols that have such deep theology, as we've been thinking about, all these different words and what they mean and what's going on, but also ones that are written for a real world, a world where there's sorrowful joy, as well as the exuberant joy that Phil was talking about last week. Each verse starts, you can hear it, can't you? Oh, come. Oh, please. Oh, if only. That longing in the voice, that longing in the heart. We can sing this, and we can sing it knowing nothing, as maybe at carols by candlelight we might do for some people in a few weeks. We could sing it from our point of view where we're saying, well, yes, I know that this has happened and I know what Jesus has done, but I'm still not completely convinced about that next bit. Because look at what's happening and look at what's going on. Or we can sing it from that point of saying, yes, I know. And whichever one we sing it from, it still says the same and still draws us on and moves us on further and encourages us and challenges us. And the challenge for me always, I've used this phrase lots of times with you before, you know it. Oh, here's the Luke one, by which the rising sun will come to us, and it's day spring in the King James. It's that place of life in a place of death. And it's that way, I couldn't find the picture I've used before, this was the closest that I could. The idea of the inbreaking of the kingdom of God in the world. And that's begun. And we can live in the reality of that because of what Jesus has done through his death and his resurrection. And we haven't yet fully seen the completion of it. We live in that in-between time. But actually, when we know it, when we're feeling that certainty, phrase I've used lots of times before, but it's a while since I have, we can grab handfuls of that future reality and drag it to earth now. By the way that we are, by the way that we live, by the words that we use, by our actions, by our attitudes, by the way that we treat people, by the way that we show the kingdom to people. We're living in that in-between time that the writer of this song picks up so beautifully. Oh come, Emmanuel. Whether it's the first time, whether it's the second time, whether it's to bring about the change in the world, whether it's to finally bring the completion of it, and we live in the middle. And yet we can know the assurance and the reality of that, even amongst the people and the time and the feelings and the emotions that we have. And we can be an inbreaking of God's kingdom into those people's lives as we reveal him and his love and what it means to really be known and loved by God to those people. Shall we sing the song? The best recording we could find, I think, is a choir singing it. So we'll have to sing along with the choir. But I'm sure that'll be okay, you can manage that. And they sing, I don't know how many verses. We're probably going to stop at the end of the 3 that we've been thinking about. That's all that we normally sing and we were going to sing today. Let's sing this song and then I'll pray to finish our service today.